This morning when I got up, I seen this Formula One video and I said, you know what? Let's recreate that in Davinci. So that's what we'll be doing today. All right, so going through this frame by frame by just using your keyboard, what I noticed is there's a couple of different animations going on here. One, we have a color shift of the main bar, and then the bar also has a reveal that is kind of like on an angle that goes across, and then the text falls behind it with like an angle of its own. And also there's a little red bar that's right here that then appears and it fills out while all the color is coming into the main bar. And it seems like the font doesn't really change color, it's just everything around it does, so that just stays solid white. Watching through here, there's another area right here where another one of the same sort of lower thirds, this one's just a little wider, this one has a blue, so I'm guessing they just have the color coordination, or the color coordinated with the team that's currently on screen. And since this is the Ferrari area, they have the red there. So let's get started with creating this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come up to my effects, and I'm just going to pull down a solid, just so I have something to work with in Fusion. And I'll create that into a compound node. Now over in Fusion, I'll be able to start creating stuff. The first thing we're going to do is the actual bar itself. So here is just a background node, and their bar is not completely black. It's kind of like a really dark purple. And if we were to take a rectangle, we now have our hard corners, our 9-degree angles, but if we were to turn up the radius, it's going to add it to all of them. So that's not going to work. So the other option that we have is if we were then to make our own square. So if we click on this, and we could start creating our own square, and then this corner here, just kind of have it go around, and then close this like that, and then we could work on this edge here. We could probably get away with something if we worked at this enough to get these lines straight and stuff. We could probably get something to work here, almost something like that, with the top has a little bit of an angle. You can see it over here. That would work, but it's not clean. It's not that clean. So I want to show you guys a different way that we could manipulate this. Now, when you bring in a background node, what ends up happening is that particular layer is 1920, or well, it's the same size as whatever the project is. But when you bring in other elements, like let's say you bring in a logo or just random other files, they'll have different resolutions. So what we could do is we could treat this like a completely different resolution. So if we were to, let's get another background here so we can see this. Let's make this one white for now, and we'll just connect these up so we can now see them. If we were to take this background node and make the actual element itself smaller, so let's just bring this down, what you'll see is it's almost like the rectangle, but this is the whole element, and there's a lot of other like little things that you can do. So let's make this the like an accurate size here, so we'll just bring this down a little bit. Something like that might work. Bring this in. That could work. That's kind of something like we have here. So let's do that. And now the cool thing about this is we can then add our rectangle in here, plop this in, and this is everything's at 5 or a half. If we just go full, it'll fill up that whole element. So this whole background, it'll fill the whole thing up. And then we could bring the corners in. We zoom in a little bit here. We could bring those corners in, and now we have the rounded corners. but we can also add another node. So let's just grab another one in here and connect this up in here, right? And for this one, we could fill out all of those other corners. So if we were to click on here, click here, 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 go all the way around. Now it fills those other corners and we still have our rounded bit here. So that's one method that we could use. So let's just go with that. I'm going to leave everything centered and not move any of the parameters for when it comes to size, because I want this whole element to stay together. And then the last node, we'll just put in a transform to then position it. So we'll do all the positioning later. Let's just make the actual element itself first. Okay, so the next thing that we could add in here is the font. So let's just pull this over. We'll get a font node and we will connect it over here because we want to all stay within this. All right, now in here, I'm just going to put JRTV, fine. Maybe bring the size down a little bit. Let's do like 5, or maybe we can do more. Let's bring it down a little bit. Maybe like 6. Okay, now we have that. Now let's add that little red bit, or actually, let's align this to the left, so it's the left here. So if we were to build this element and continuously use it, if we had it at the default in the middle, every time we work on it, it's just going to expand like this, because everything is lined up to here, and then the longer the name, the more it fills out here. We're gonna want to align this to here, so the point is on the side here, and then everything else just flows to the side instead of just expanding to have that center point. So that's what we'll do. I don't know where I want to position that yet, so we'll just hold off on that. Let's bring in another background node, and we'll connect that here, so it's before, and we'll change the color on the actual node to red or whatever color you want. We're going to be in the Ferrari area for this one. We'll drop this down, we'll connect this up, and then we'll just make this into a little line. And one of the things you'll notice is because this moves a lot and we want it to be pretty small, we're going to be holding Control, and then we can have like fine-tune adjustments. So we're gonna just bring this over here. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit by holding Control and mouse wheeling in to zoom in. I'm going to hold Control again to change the size for the height and the width. Let's just not use it at the beginning, but okay. Maybe like the from the top to the bottom of the J, something like that looks good, I think. All right, so now we have all of our elements in here. Let's move the text over maybe a little bit. Something like that. I think that looks good. Okay, so now we have the elements and we're looking pretty close to this, I would say. The next thing that we're gonna want to do, actually, you know what? Let me come into my height here. Let's bring this down a little bit. Whoa, 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 wrong one. Bring this down just a little bit. Damn it. I think it was like right there. All right. Just want to make this a bit smaller. Now these are just fine-tune adjustments. You can adjust this to your liking. Bring this over here. I think the text is fine like that. All right. That looks good. That's working for me. All right. So now we have to add in all of our animations. So the first animation, just work from the beginning, is the wipe across. All right, so let's do that little wipe across. I don't know how many frames that is, but it's relatively quick. And whatever I set my frames to, your frames might be different because it really all depends on the frame rate that you're playing at. I'm at 24 right now. Whatever you make your timeline at, obviously it's gonna play out a little bit different when it comes to speed because we're working with frames here. Okay, frame 0, I need to wipe this across. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave everything, just to make this easier. You could add another element in, but I just want this to be a little less cluttered, so I'm gonna just move this over here. I'm going to connect this background node up and then switch these two. So this is the background and then this is the foreground. I'm going to hit Control T to switch them. And this background node, I'm just going to switch it alpha. So this is just an invisible layer, but I want to be able to use the mask on a completely different node, so this doesn't get too confusing for you guys. All right, so now within this mask, everything has to fit within this mask, or so I can wipe everything out. Now this is only for everything up in front of this, so this will only be this background element. I could move this up a little further, but I'm just gonna do it here and leave each piece separately. So if I push this all the way out, be the full length, but remember I have to put it on an angle. So what has to happen is whatever angle I pick, it needs to be able to fit, the whole bar needs to be able to fit in here. If it doesn't fit, I can just come over here and just change this. So if I want it to be 2, I could make it 2. You could change these. Just because you can only go over so far, that doesn't matter. You can just always type something in there and it will expand this whole bar that you move it back and forth. But yeah. All right, so let's bring this back just a little bit and let's do 55, just so it's easy, because I'm gonna do the same angle for the text as well. All right, so it's going to start over here, right? Frame 0, or frame 1, right here, frame 1. We're going to save the position, and then let's come in half a second, so like 10 frames, and then have it fill out. So what happens? Let's see that. Boom. Okay. All right. With it being linear like that, that's perfectly fine. All right, so let's just switch these around so all of my masks are in the bottom, because I'll just add the mask below these as well. Okay, so that's the first one. So now we have that, and because we're still on, we still have this. We're working on the background stuff. Let's have this switch. So it fills all the way out, I think. Yeah, it fills all the way out and then starts to add the color. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll just go to like go back 1 frame, so like frame 9, it's still filling it in. We're gonna come over to or actually, let's do a couple of frames. So let's do frame 15, come over here to color. We'll keyframe all of these colors and then come back to 9, and we will pick that light and partially transparent. So now, don't really see it, we sort of see it, and then it comes in. I think I'm gonna go back 2 frames. So I'm gonna click on my Spline Editor. This is background 1. Come in here, background 1. The only keyframes we have for that are the colors. We'll click this little button here so we can see all the keyframes. Here are the last keyframes. We'll highlight those. And we're gonna hold Shift so we can move them without them changing their values. The only thing that they're changing is what frame they're on. So we'll come back to that particular frame that we have our playhead on. Okay, that's working for me. That's a bit better, it's a bit quicker. All right, so now we have that done. Now here is the little bar. This is that red bar. What we're gonna do for this one is we're just going to take the rectangle that's right now just the mask for this little line. We're gonna copy, Control-C, Control-V to paste another one. And what we're gonna do when you make multiple masks, you get this different modes that you can do. We're gonna do multiply. So now what happens is the different masks have to be able to touch each other to multiply to a visible amount. Let me show you here. So if I take the second node here and I move it out, the only part that you can see is when they touch. See that? Only when they touch is when they're visible. If I didn't have this in here, and let's say I would take, the mask that we had before and I move it, it's just gonna move the whole little square. So that's not what we want. We want to be able to take this current location and add something else in that when they overlap, then it kind of fills in, because that's kind of like the effect that we have here. Is it just, kind of, hold on, what am I doing here? Reset. Let's go back. What the hell? Okay, we got it. Close that. Is this? It starts to just, it starts small and then it starts to fill out. So that's what we want it to do. And if you notice here, it's doing the filling out here when the color changes. So that's a cue for when we have to put these keyframes. All right, so let's click on let's click on our background so we can see where those keyframes are. So it's like right here. All right, now mask, we're gonna Control-C, Control-V to paste one, change the mode to multiply. Then we're just going to hit save a keyframe. We're moving this on the y-axis, so currently it's at 5, so we'll have to come back to 5, which is perfectly fine. So we'll just start it here, and then I'm gonna come over here to our background, see where our other keyframe is, which is right here. Come back to our rectangle so I know where to put that, and then I'm just going to change this to 0.5. And now it should fill in when that color is being applied. Okay. All right, looks good. So the next thing we have here is our text. So because our text is, our merge is here, if we add a mask onto this merge, it'll affect whatever the foreground is. So we'll just take a mask and then connect it to this merge. And now if we move this, it'll get rid of the text. So what we need to do is we need to make this big enough that it's just covering this whole thing. I would just max it out because it's easier. And then remember our angle was 55, so we'll get that same angle. And let's change this background color so I can see this. Okay, so now as on here, as that background bar starts to come across, then it starts to reveal the text underneath. So we'll just have the keyframes of this little guy. We just want it to be a little delayed. So we'll start keyframe 3, come over here, and we will bring everything back to here. And we will add a keyframe, and then it's done like right here. So we'll just do one frame after, and we'll have the whole bar revealed. So something like that. All right, let's look at this. So the one, it's starting to reveal, and then it reveals everything else. The only reason why that pops in is because how quick that bars moving across. It's perfectly fine though. All right, so we're looking pretty good. We got the majority of this completed. All right, let's take a look here. So it just goes across. Right? And it adds that color in. And the little bar comes down, and then it's done. All right. So that's looking like that's just about it. So what we're gonna do now is we need to change its location, and we need to connect it up to the media out so that we have it back on our timeline. So we'll just move this one, media out, and we don't need to have these backgrounds and this merge because that was just so that we could build this object. So we'll get rid of that. We'll hit Shift Spacebar. So you're just gonna hit Shift, then Spacebar, and we'll just type in transform. We got a transform node. We will connect it up like so. And now we can take in our transform node, if we click on it, we can then position this, zoom out a bit, we can position this wherever we want it. So let's position it like that. And that's looking good. The media in really doesn't matter. Everything else looks good. Come back over to our edit tab. And now we have it over here. So we'll just bring it up. And I have a clip here that I have in the preview monitor. I'll just bring that into our timeline. Oops, what happened? Bring it in, oh. Bring it into our timeline. Oh gosh. All right. Wanted to take it to the edge. Anyways, so we'll bring it to our timeline and it comes up and displays. Great. What happens at the end here? I think it just disappears. Yeah, it just fades out. So easy way to do that, just pick wherever it is that you're done viewing this. So like, let's say we want it to stop here. So we'll just make this smaller. And if you have your mouse cursor at the top here, you get this little bar, that little, like, I don't even know what to call that. The little guy appears, right? And we can bring this in and it'll just feather out. And you can make it as long as you want. It's just like a dissolve, pretty much. And that's the exact thing that this did. So let's bring this in a little bit so we can see the shot. Let's go full screen. It's playing, the shot, and then it comes up. Now, you could be saying, well, JR, that looks great, but it's huge. It's taking up like the whole thing. Okay, so it's not the same size as that. I screwed up on the sizing a little bit. That's fine. We just come into this transform, and because everything is built before this, everything that's being piped into this transform, you can affect now. So this one node, I can come in and I can change the size. So we'll bring it down and make it smaller. I'll bring it over this way a little bit. So something, I don't know, like that. Well, back over into the edit tab, now it's smaller. There you go, perfect. And yeah, that's pretty much how we would recreate this one. Let me know in the comments what you think about this one. If you have any ideas or suggestions I should do in the future, let me know on there as well. Again, my name's JR, and thanks for watching.